Hello, Coach Robert here. So today we're going to do something a little different. So I wanted to show you guys tactics, puzzles. We've been talking about tactics a lot, and I thought it'd be neat if I showed you where you could go and get some practice yourself and show you kind of what it's like. Work through some myself and let you see kind of how I think through doing these puzzles and how they help me prepare for chess games. Before we jump into that, I want to kind of give you some ideas of how I approach it. I look for things that that a lot of people call power moves. See if I can write this out. Power moves. Power moves are moves that basically force your opponent to do something by making a real big threat. So one power move might be check in one or two moves. So it's like putting a king in check or threatening to check, because that means the king has to respond. Now, just because you can check a king doesn't make it a good move. You should evaluate all of your checks, though, to see if any of them make your opponent do something that they don't want to do. Another might be attacking the queen. If you can't get to the king, maybe you can get to the queen. That's a second power type move that I look for. Then I look for forks, pins, and skewers. And after that, I'm just really looking for stuff that might attack a strong piece with a weak piece. Yeah, that's a good one. Attack strong piece with a weak piece. And then I'm just looking if I can put my pieces in good places where they might have those opportunities after that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as I go through these tactics. So I'm going to work a few and kind of show you how to do this yourself. Obviously, it helps if you do know some checkmate patterns, but we're going to head over to a website called lichess.org. Let me write that one down. lichess.org. You can create an account here. It's a free account, and you can keep track of how you're doing the puzzles, or you can just go over there and without creating an account, jump into puzzles. The nice thing about having an account is it'll keep track of how you're doing. You can specify what kind of puzzles you work on. But one of the reasons this is a good website is because it is free and you can do as many puzzles as you want. So we're going to head over there. Okay, so I'm over at lichess.org now. I am signed in with my username, ChessBobbert. What we're going to do, we're going to head over to puzzles. We're right here. And if I hop over here, I've not done any puzzles on here with this account before, so this is brand new. I can jump in right now. So let's go ahead and start by putting the difficulty on easiest, just so you can get some ideas. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and remember the first thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for checks. I haven't seen this puzzle before. This is brand new to me. Every puzzle that we're going to come across, I'm not going to know how to do it until I analyze it. Okay, so the king I see is right here on f8. I have a queen that can check that king in 3 different ways. I can go to g7, g8, or h8. But I also see that g7 and g8, the queen would not be protected and the king could just capture it. But if I move the queen to h8, that should trap the king, and there's no move for the king to move. That's checkmate. You actually see on the right the moves in the game that led up to this position. These all come from actual games. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so I see they just captured a bishop on their turn. So I have one piece that can check. It's the bishop attacking the knight. I actually have 2 pieces that can take that knight. That knight is not protected. But I see that if I take the knight with the bishop, that's going to fork the king and the rook. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so the king moves over. And now making sure that I don't have any extra checks. I don't see any other moves that check, but I can now take the rook for free. All right, and that's that one. Let's go on to another one. Okay, so this one is interesting. we have the king over here on the edge. I have this knight that can come and perhaps check the king. I think this is the only piece that I can move that will check the king. When I do that, that's going to expose the rook. And so my rook will be able to capture the rook. So let me see if it'll let me draw on this. So I'm saying if my knight comes to here, then the king is going to be in check. And the rook will be attacking the other rook. This king can move over and protect the rook. If I capture, the king will step over, and then the knight can come here, fork the king and the bishop, and I win the bishop. Well, let's see if that all works. Y'all able to follow that? Let me try to clear out all those. So I'm looking at knight comes here, king comes here to protect the rook. Rook captures rook, king captures rook, knight attacks the king and the bishop all at once. Let's see if that works. I don't see any other checks. I feel like this is the only check that makes sense. Okay, so the king is dead, comes after the knight, which that means the rook is free. Actually, before I do that, let me make sure I can't save the knight. But I don't see a way to actually attack the king and win the rook. So I'm going to take the rook here, and that was it. Okay, so let's try the next one. All right, it looks like they just took a rook over on a1. And now I've got to find a good move. So they've got an extra rook, but I'm seeing this king is back in the corner. It's behind his own pawns. And so I'm looking at queen comes to c8, because that would look like a back rank mate. They only have one piece that can block, and so that's what I'm going to do. Queen here, queen blocks, and that's checkmate. Let's try another one. Okay, let's see, we've got we only have a rook that can attack the king. If I put the rook on c3, the pawn protects it, but nothing protects the pawn. So the king can actually take the pawn, but this is a skewer. Hopefully remember that. The rook will then be able to take my opponent's rook. I don't see a counterattack for them. The knight won't be able to do anything about it. The knight can attack my king, but my rook is far enough away. So let's try that. Rook check, and rook takes rook. Okay, now I know y'all are probably looking at this as, wow, he knows how to do all these. Okay, I'm not a grandmaster or anything like that. I'm not even doing these very fast. If you watch some videos of Hikaru Nakamura doing Puzzle Rush, he can solve these puzzles almost as fast as they show up on the screen. It is unbelievable how fast he is at this. Okay, so these puzzles that I'm doing, they're saying they're rating around 906. That's pretty easy for me. So let me see if I can jump to a higher difficulty. Let's go to normal. All right, and okay. Now this looks a little bit more challenging. There's a lot more pieces in the way. All right, so I've got a knight that is under attack by 2 pieces. I've got 2 pieces here. If I'm looking at checks, my knight could come here, or my knight could go here. Both of those check the king, but both drop the knight. So I don't think I want to do that. So I need to look for something else. So how about attacks on the queen? Well, that would be here and here. Well, we already said if the knight moves here, it's going to fall. But the knight move here is going to attack both the queen and the rook simultaneously. That satisfies 2 things. I'm attacking the queen, and I'm attacking 2 pieces at once, and I'm attacking valuable pieces with less valuable pieces. So I'm pretty sure that's the way I want to go. I don't see any straightforward counterattacks. If, for example, they try to attack the queen with the bishop, then the knight just comes back and attacks the bishop. If they try to push the pawn, then yeah, we have enough pawns and rooks here that we're going to be able to stop that. All right, so yep, the queen moves and I win the rook. Okay, so that one was more a 1568 rating. So still a little bit below my typical puzzle ratings. On most websites, my puzzle ratings are around 2,000. But you can see these are a little bit more challenging. They're going to take a little bit more time. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay. All right, this is interesting. We've got the king back here that looks kind of protected with the rooks and the pawns around here. But they just put this pawn on this square that I have 3 pieces attacking. I've got the rook here, and the queen all attacking the same pawn, right? So let me think through. If I take the pawn, that would be check, right? I'm looking for checks. They could block with the queen, but then I would just take their queen. The alternative would be to capture back with this pawn, and that would let me check again, right? With the rook. Then they could block with the queen. And that would probably be it for me. I could trade my 2 rooks for a queen and a pawn. Don't know if that's the way I'd want to do it, considering they've got these rooks sitting right here ready to go. So let me see if, let me think through this. If I go rook takes, pawn takes, and then queen takes, then their only choices are queen over, which queen takes and checkmate, or king over, followed by queen over to h6, and then we have a lawnmower mate. With the, what we'd have is we'd end up with the queen. Oops, we'd have the queen over on this square, and the rook here covering this row. So I think that's going to work. Let's try this. Rook captures pawn. Now the queen captures the pawn instead, and there we go. That's checkmate. All right, so that was a 16-20. So that's again getting a little bit tougher. Let's try another one. Okay, so this time I'm playing with the white pieces. Let's see. Always looking for those checks if we can find them. Let's see, we've got the rook can capture the rook, king can capture back. At that point we have a pawn on this e, a pin on the e pawn. So let me kind of explain this. If I capture the rook here for check, then the king can capture and return. There aren't very many checks after that. Like I can't capture the pawn with the queen because the king can capture, but I could bring my rook back over. And the king has to step back. The king could step back here. Let's see. I think drawing the king over is the right move, but I'm not sure about the follow-up. I don't know if I want to. I've got the 2 choices. I've got the rook comes over here and puts check, or the rook captures the pawn and can't be recaptured because of the pin. I don't think that's the right move though. So let's try rook captures and rook chases. Hey, that's all they wanted me to do. Okay, so my guess is from here the king's gonna have to step back somewhere. The queen's gonna be able to take the pawn. My king is still safe, and I've got a pretty big attack coming in. So I think that was all it wanted. Sometimes I don't know the whole progression, and we just have to go with what looks the best for the time being. All right, let's do a couple more here. All right, so let's see. Actually, I think I have a couple of different checks available. I don't know which one is best. I'm looking at the pieces. I've got 2 knights and a bishop and a rook. They've got 2 bishops, a knight, and 2 rooks, and 2 pawns and 1 pawn. So I am not in great shape here. This is not looking great for me. So looking at my checks, I've got the knight comes here or the knight comes here, but both of those can be captured. The rook can capture this knight. Well, it probably wouldn't because that would be bad for the rook. But the bishop could capture. So this is clearly not a good move. Knight to c6 is not a good move. That just hangs my knight. We also have the rook that can come over and check, and that actually looks pretty good. We've got the king won't be able to come here because of the bishop, right? It won't be able to capture the rook because of the knight. So that only leaves one square for the king to go to. So let me clear that up again. So we're thinking rook over here, followed by king here. Do I have any follow-up checks? Yeah, I do. I can bring the knight up to check the king again, forcing the king over. And then the rook can finish with checkmate. Okay, I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna. I think we got a forced mate here. Check. Then what would we say next? The next is another check with the knight, and then checkmate. There we go. That was a 1639. A little bit tougher. Let's. Something when you're doing puzzles over here, it also shows you some of the themes of the puzzle that are involved. So there was an exposed king, forks, long puzzle, mate in 3, middle game. So you can actually pick themes to practice if you need to. Let's do one more. Oh, good. This one looks tough. We got the king way off in the corner. I don't have any clear checks at all with this king, right? It is looking very exposed. Very protected. So we just had a pawn capture a pawn on e5. What do we have? Okay, so I've got a knight move that would attack the queen, but there are 2 pieces protecting that square, so I don't know that that's going to work out. I would probably be able to actually, let's think about this. Let's think. Okay, if the knight comes here and the knight recaptures, then when the pawn recaptures, I'm attacking 2 pieces at once. Remember, that's what I want to do. I'd actually have the pawn attacking the bishop and the rook attacking the queen. Okay, so that's if the knight captures first. Let's look if the bishop captures first. If the bishop captures first and the pawn recaptures, then I am attacking the queen. But then the knight is also not able to be defended. I'm attacking the queen, right? And if the queen moves, then the queen's attacking the knight. So I think that might be it. Attack the queen with the knight. Force them to capture my knight. Yeah, let's try this. Okay, they chose to with the bishop. So we recapture, and there we go. We've got rook attacking the queen, and the queen can no longer stay defending the knight. And so this is, we learned this in another video, removing the defender. All right, we've worked through a handful of puzzles. So if you want to really get good at your chess game and thinking through moves, this is a great way to do it. Notice when I'm doing this, I don't just rush in and I just try stuff. I think through it. I think through all the different variations. If you do this in your games, if you do this by using these puzzle trainers like on lichess.org, you're going to become much better, much faster. You see that this may seem like I'm still going pretty fast, but that's because I've got a lot of experience. I've got a lot of practice thinking through, okay, attack the king. If I can't attack the king, attack the queen. If I attack the queen, what's going to happen? How to count the pieces that are on the attacks and defense. So get some practice with this, and you'll be amazed at how fast your game improves just by working these puzzles and getting practice with the tactics we've been learning about in the other videos. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll find some chances to do this yourself, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys and doing some more chess soon.